2023 has been a fantastic year in terms of the volume and quality of video game releases. As the year is coming to an end, and the time between Christmas and New Year is customarily a time for reflection and best of lists, here I'm going to talk about my best games of 2023, including my ultimate game of the year. For 2022, I did this in the form of a pseudo award show. However, I have not long put on an actual award show in the form of the Horror Game Awards, which has been a fantastic, if intense experience, and one I hope will continue for many years to come. I'm going to stray from that format a little, but rather than return to a more traditional top 10, I'm going to name my favourite games and talk about the things that set them apart, and then declare one of them the Game of the Year. Let's start with a few honourable mentions. Horizon Forbidden West's Burning Shores DLC was a great reminder of why I love the Horizon games so much, and if you've experienced the main game but not the DLC yet, you should definitely give it a go. The finale it offers is epic. Dead Island 2 fell short in a lot of areas for me, particularly as a single player experience, but as a three-way multiplayer, it's a great laugh and top-notch fun. That alone makes it worth playing, as long as you have friends to play with. The Tartarus Key was a huge amount of fun, an escape room puzzler with cosmic horror themes, eccentric characters, and retro PS1 era graphics. It has multiple endings too, so there's reasons to not just play, but replay. Killer Frequency is another puzzle horror game, but this time, rather than being in the escape room, you're using clues to navigate other people out of their predicaments, with deadly consequences if you fail. Set in a small American town with 80s B-movie vibes and the King Falls AM inspired setting of a radio DJ turned 911 operator, with cool tunes and dry humour, it's a winner. The Chance the Gloom Below DLC was a superb add-on to one of my favourite games of last year. The death mechanic and Souls-like level design really adds a new dimension to the survival horror here. Now, for the games that absolutely blew my socks off. Resident Evil 4 Remake. Easily the best Resident Evil remake of the RE Engine era, and the only one besides Resident Evil 2002, which remains the best remake, to in my opinion surpass the original game. Both as a fan of the original tank control fixed camera games and as someone who was playing games less at the point when I had to try and get used to a new camera and control system in that generation of games, the original RE4 never really gelled with me. I didn't hate it, but I'd be far more likely to return to RE2 or 3 than 4 if I wanted a Resident Evil experience. Having something more horror focused, with a narrative which felt like it connected to the older entries, rather than the original effectively trying to do a soft reboot of the series, was a breath of fresh air. The vastly improved gameplay mechanics made the combat so much more fun too, and my only criticism of it would be the professional difficulty. Resident Evil is a mixed bag when it comes to extreme difficulties. RE3 Remake's Inferno mode was one of its best points, whereas RE Village's Village of Shadows mode was an absurd slog even with infinite ammo weapons. RE4R's Professional was nowhere near that bad, but Hardcore felt like a far better balanced difficulty to me. With that said, RE4R is a contender in terms of narrative and soundtrack. I'd also list Nick Apostolides as Leon and Craig Bernatowski as Wesker in the contenders for best performance. But it is the runaway winner for best action game and best gameplay.
Ashley, run! The entire world shall overflow with his grace.
What's happening to me?
Now, abandon your body.
Leave the girl. She's lost no matter what.
Now that he has chosen death.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Bramble, the Mountain King. When I first saw Bramble, I likened it to Little Nightmares, and that comparison, as a 2.5D platformer where you play as a child escaping monsters, certainly holds. But it also has an identity all of its own, rooted in Nordic folklore and fairy tales. It looks great in its initial moments as something charming and whimsical, and it absolutely excels when things get dark. Bramble the Mountain King is one of the best narrative adventures of the year, and it has a sublime score, topped off with the final boss fight set to In the Hall of the Mountain King, and truly unique art direction. It's the year's best indie game for me. Alan Wake 2. And then we get to the game that inspired me to play its predecessor through for 13 hours straight just to be ready for when it launched. The game that has stayed in my head throughout the last few months since I experienced it. The subject of a 20-minute review when it came out, and with a video essay on its story coming in January. I've said so much about Alan Wake 2 already, but I have no trouble repeating just how good it is, with survival horror gameplay that ties the narrative and ludo-narrative together by literally having you rewrite the world, compelling characterization delivered by a cast of fantastic performers, the incredible weaving together of CG and live action, and not just in cutscenes, and even a New Game Plus mode that weaves the very idea of New Game Plus into the narrative to deliver a definitive new ending. This game is nothing short of a masterpiece. Melanie Liebert as Saga Anderson, James McCaffrey and Sam Lake as Alex Casey, and everyone else in the cast does a great job of bringing it to life. Ilka Villi and Matthew Perretta's joint performance as Alan Wake is easily the best performance of 2023 though, with a special mention to Ilka for his portrayal of both Alan Wake and Tom Zane in scenes where they're interacting with and playing off one another. A truly brilliant piece of work. The game has the year's best art direction, best narrative, and best soundtrack. I'm not going to say it's the best survival horror, simply because I've not played enough survival horror games from the current year. However, it is, to nobody's surprise at all, my game of the year.
And the award goes to Alan Wake.
And all your stories of crime and chilling thrillers of hard-boiled killers became bestsellers. It was all too much, I had to get away.
So there you have it, my favourite games of 2023. This is obviously entirely subjective based on my opinion and limited by the number of games I've played and the vast number of games I haven't. So you may have different choices. What are they? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. Like the video that just popped up, which YouTube thinks you should watch next. This is a Patreon and member supported channel, so if you want to become a member and unlock custom badges and emojis, early access to my videos, and your name in the credits, then click the join button below. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.